It is the Mosley Show, and Nicki Collen back on with us. And Coach, miss talking to you. I did get a good visit with Tony late in the season, checking in with him, and then but it's been a little bit, and now the excitement of March is truly here. You know where you're going to be. Congratulations on that. Bears are a 6 seed. Do you feel like it was a nice reset after the early exit from the Big 12? It's like weird. It wasn't early exit, but when you're like a double bye, it's like it does. It's not that early. It's a strange thing. But I guess the silver lining in that always is maybe a little bit more rest. Now you've had what going on before you'll play. You're going on like 2 weeks of rest. How do you kind of feeling about things as you've been able to maybe hit the reset button a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's been good for us. I think that and certainly we didn't want to go out in the quarters. And you're right. I think having the double bye, and not playing until Friday, there's advantage, disadvantage, but I think for us, in particular Talia, I think this time off has been good. I think the wear and tear, for her, I see a different burst in her, as we've been able to get in. I think we've had 4 off days in the last 8 days, so we've certainly practiced and we've practiced hard. But when you don't have an opponent that you're preparing for, you're kind of leaning into the fundamentals and pace and execution, whether it's half court, full court, or your defense. And so, but I think for a lot of our players, I think it was good for them to have some time off their knees and ankles and, all the things that begin to hurt as the season goes along. So just kind of excited. I mean, I think the toughest part, and this happened, to us 2 years ago, we had a play-in game when we had Vanderbilt, Columbia, and kind of had this same pathway. Um, it's frustrating as a coach that it's selection show and you're about to get your matchup and then you still don't have your matchup because now we're still in the, if the committee thinks Richmond and Nebraska are both 11 seeds and then they're obviously very equal, then you can't really pick. I mean, maybe ESPN predictor has Nebraska 72%, but I don't think that really means anything. I think both teams are really, really good. And there's not many similarities other than both teams can put up points and have good shooters. How they play, how they defend, night and day, so it makes it very hard when you're trying to look for commonalities that, hey, no matter who we play, we're going to work on blank. There's a big difference between lots of sets and high ball screen with a, high efficiency, high volume point guard with Nebraska versus a high efficiency power forward in motion. It's like you're talking about two very, very different offenses to prepare for. So, and defensively, Nebraska's more aggressive, Richmond's more containment, but both play man. So can't really, really lock in and prepare the same way you would want to, but it is what it is. And I think they will have 1 day prep for us as well. And so we should be ahead from that perspective because neither one of those teams is not thinking they need to win the game in front of them and really focused on Baylor.
How nice is it to get away from the grind of Big 12 where everybody knows each other and everybody in a sense you get to there's that freedom that comes. It's almost like going back to some non-conference and I mean that has to be a little bit relief, doesn't it, just to get out of conference and then and also I would think your Big Ten, your history of Big Ten, so something, and maybe I'm just making too much up here, but something tells me that your DNA of knowing that conference and all, I would like to think that helps a little bit. Just
I think for me it's really just that I'm constantly a student of the game. I'm watching everybody. Ironically, Aaron Rousseau at Richmond, I spent a lot of time around him in the summer. My daughter ended up, choosing UCF for lacrosse, but Richmond, she went to camp at Richmond. And, was an early favorite by me for her. And so, I just, I've spent some time talking to him. I know he's a guy that just is really good at what he does. And so I watch their motion, having spent 2 years at FGCU and running motion there. Seeing what he does in a world of that's very different from, what most teams do. Amy Williams actually coached Tari, who was on my staff until this past year. And, we recruited Britt Prince, who's their leading scorer, and got to know her mom, who was her high school coach and her club coach well. So, have really followed them because of her. But I just watch, like I don't have much of a life outside basketball. So, if I'm not coaching it or scouting it, I'm just watching. So between the Big Ten Network and Big Ten Plus, there's not many teams that could have popped up on the selection show.
Mhm.
And when I get interviewed, post selection show, I'm not going to know who their coach is, what they run, what they like,
Mhm.
I mean, it just, I may not know what I know 48 hours later after, really diving into the film, but I have a pretty good feel for the majority of teams in the NCAA tournament just because I'm kind of obsessed with the game.
Yeah, and it's you brought up Talia. Um, she's had such an incredible season for you. It'll be great. Maybe she's gotten some rest, got it under. I don't know. I think I was reading that Ramadan. I mean, she's having to kind of manage some of that. I've seen players in the past. I mean, depending on when a game starts, obviously they're a little bit depleted when it comes to certain things, nutrients and all that kind of thing. But I'm just kind of curious is like because I would think it's a physical reset for her and then just sort of a mental reset because you have obviously had to lean on her from a scoring standpoint all season. When you see a player's and you've seen it from a couple of players this season, their shooting get in a bad way. I think one of those games she was 5 for 21. She got in a bit of a rut. Um, how do you get her out of that? Like, and is it, hey, let's get you some easier shots? Let's get you something maybe going at the rim. You've had some guards in the past that would go, Jada was not sitting out there shooting a bunch of threes. She was
Right.
obviously trying to get to the rim and she had some funky stuff, but it worked so well that you guys went to a Sweet 16 and really had a good chance to go to the Elite Eight. What are you trying to get for Talia to maybe make life a little bit easier on her?
Yeah, I think as the season has worn on, I don't think she has gotten herself to the rim. I think early in the year, when she didn't shoot the ball efficiently, she still got 20 because she got downhill and drew fouls. I think as the season went along, two things have happened, and it's that this is not all on her. One, I think it's the wear and tear. She's probably leaned into the pull up more, and certainly can get cooking in her pull up game. But I think the other thing that's happened, quite frankly, is because we haven't shot the ball as well from other positions. um, she's gone from having creases to having walls, and so, TCU built walls, Colorado built walls, so if she's not getting it early in transition, and I think that's where the rest helps. When she's getting the ball in transition, you can't build walls yet, but if we're not getting stops, and we're facing set defenses and we're playing in the half court, people were showing a lot of help, off of us really from the 3-4-5 anytime they were on the perimeter. I think Ting and Jana, there's gaps there. But analytically, teams are going to take the approach of who am I going to give shots to? And so I think it became tougher for her to get all the way to the rim. And so there were probably opportunities when it was there and she missed it just because the majority of the time it wasn't there. But I think that's been a lot of it, and so I've had to work to get her in floppies and other situations where I can get her off screens. As the season worn along, they've top blocked her in pin downs. They've, I mean, obviously, like, um, she's at the top of every scouting report. And so no matter who we play, they're not necessarily going to change. I mean, this is the first year, we've seen boxing one. Like we've seen a lot of stuff. And we've managed to figure out most of it on the fly, but we've had to be creative in different games with, because we haven't shot the ball as well as a lot of our players are capable of. Bella Fauntleroy is a good shooter. Her numbers do not, indicate that this year, and therefore that's made it tougher, I think. But we've got to get in transition. We got to get stops. And we've got to get her on the move.
Do you kind of use this time also to remind your team that, hey, we had like a really good long run this season and we were in the mix for playing for the conference title? I mean, like when it doesn't end like you want, do you have to get it? Do you have to almost put that, that philosophical hat on and kind of get their spirits back up and remind them, hey, we're a pretty good team. I mean, let's
Yeah,
not.
I don't think we've ever lost confidence. I think, that doesn't mean we haven't had players go through, slumps where like they've lost some confidence in their own shot. I don't think we've lost confidence as a team. Like I look at that Colorado game and the challenge was, if Talia goes 8 for 21 instead of 5 for 21, and I don't put it on Talia because if she goes 5 for 21, but Bella goes 4 for 9 instead of 1 for 9, if we don't shoot 50% from the foul line, which we've been a phenomenal free throw shooting team all year long, like that just hasn't. We had a few early hiccups, but we've been a very good free throw shooting team all year long. I mean, there's so many like things, that put you in position to be playing in the semis in that game. Um, and so like I think this team knows. I think this team, when they saw Duke up on the bracket, like they were like, yeah, like we remember what that game felt like. But we've got to have that kind of energy to win in the NCAA tournament. It's all about the energy that you bring, like yes, you have to out execute people, but when we went on the road and went to the Sweet 16 and won in Blacksburg, we just played with a ton of energy, a ton of confidence, but a ton of energy. And we had lost in the quarters that year to Iowa State as well in a game that we led with a minute and a half to go, and so it's all about being in that moment. And I think the thing about this team is, we've got a lot of people on our roster that have not played in the NCAA tournament, and so, it's like getting people to understand that it's a different level. There's a different, I think everyone that's here wanted that, but I also believe there's a different sense of, like we've got to, and it's hard because you think on Sunday you're going to have a team to prepare for, and automatically we're going to dive in yesterday, and all of a sudden we're still in limbo. Who are we playing? And so it's like, okay, let's go over 2 actions from each team, and let's focus on, okay, are they going to be in drop coverage against our ball screens? Are they going to hard hedge our ball screens? Okay, we're going to work on both, because we're going to be prepared one way or the other. But you don't get to lean into, hey, we have to take away 44, or we have to, because we're not going to guess, and so, I could guess it based on watching who I think is going to win, but it doesn't always play out that way. That's, to me, if both teams play well and play to the best of their ability, what I've seen, I think I know who will win. But I'm not sharing that, and regardless of who wins, I'm probably going to say that's the team I thought was going to win, right? So, but I do think that's the challenge right now. It's just we got to be ready no matter who it is. We've got to be able to like get to Thursday and say in a 1-day prep, we've done what we needed to do leading up to that to be ahead of whomever we're playing, who now truly has a 1-day prep for us.
Is it kind of nice the fact that y'all are familiar with Duke? You beat Duke. I know they've had some ebbs and flows to their season. They kind of, went down and then they've come rolling back. I would think that's kind of again, the other way to think of that is, well, they owe you one. But again, at least you're familiar with them. And again, that was a big moment, very, very, early in the season. And by the way, do we or do the players get excited about going to somewhere historical like we would, like, a place that's been there since 1940, Cameron Indoor Stadium? Like, does that do anything for these players that are 21 years old, or is that just
A
people
few of
like
them.
us? Okay.
I will say I heard a little bit of it'll be cool to play at Cameron. If
Mm,
you ask half our team what the name of Duke's Arena is, they wouldn't know. I mean, so it's a balance.
mm,
There are those that are more basketball nuts, and there are those that play basketball, and that doesn't mean that's not indicative of how good a player they are. Just some people are built different that way. But I think they'll be excited when we get there. And is the familiarity piece. I mean, I this is what I would say about Duke now and Duke then. The Duke that we played, I believe, was really confident because they played in the Elite Eight the year before. Um, they were a basket away from the Final Four and a South Carolina upset in the Elite Eight. I mean, it was that close. And so that team in the offseason had no belief that they weren't that team. You know what I mean? And so
mm,
I think facing them in the first game of the season when they're the seventh ranked team in the country, um, I think that's who they are now. Like, I think they were the same. I think Duke went through a stretch where they lost to us, they lost to West Virginia, they lost to UCF, where I'm sure there was some doubting and whatever, and they had to get their mojo back. But I don't think we beat a wounded team, and so
mm,
that's one of the things that I think we were the first team that beat them. No different than we were the first team that beat Iowa State. We weren't the team that beat them after Addie Brown went out and they were limping, through the month of
mm,
January, and so to me, like, we know they'll be motivated. We know they're going to be different at home. But to me, I just refuse to really spend much time talking about it because I have so much respect for Richmond and Nebraska, and we don't get to face
mm,
Duke if we don't take care of business on Friday. And I think that I firmly believe that we're a team that can play with anybody. I also think we're not um, a team that can show up and win, and so we have to play good basketball to beat Richmond or Nebraska. And so that's going to be my focus. I won't even look at Duke film until Friday, at 4:30, hopefully, after the press conference and a win. That's when I'll lean back into Duke. And certainly I've watched them and I know all their players and, I have, but, are they running the same plays? I don't know. I haven't watched them closely like that. But I know they're still hedging ball screens and I know a lot about Duke. So I'm going to be really focused on either Nebraska or Richmond.
do you have any thoughts on that court that y'all played on? That they obviously had to change courts, and I think I haven't heard anything from you on this, but I have heard thoughts that, wait, I mean, there were women complaining about migraines and slippage, and it wasn't just a shock once the men got there, and y'all didn't do anything about the court. And then one guy, a few people slip, and a guy gets an injury, and next thing you know, they got the hardwoods out there. Um, did that the way that all went down? Did that bother you?
So I'll give you two sides of that. One, I leaned into the innovation, so I was not a skeptic. We had practiced on the floor when we were down in Orlando for the WBCA event in November when we played Iowa and Davidson. We went over and we practiced on it before I knew that it was even conversationally something the Big 12 was talking about. So when they first asked me about it, I was really excited. I thought the innovation, I had seen it with the World Championship or the World Cup or whatever, and um, like NBA teams practice on it when they're in Orlando. Like, nobody manages risk and investment more than NBA teams, you know? So if NBA teams are playing and practicing on it, it must be safe. So I was a big fan of the idea. I thought it could separate us. I didn't love the Louis Vuitton court the year before, but some people loved it, and I think it's always good when people are talking. So, you know, I thought it was um worth being excited about. I'll tell you that I saw slippage. Jana slipped really right in front of me. You could see if you drop water on it, you could clearly see where it needed to be mopped up and it would stay there for a minute. Um, but we definitely saw the slipping, which did concern all the women's coaches. I also will tell you that because we weren't there very long, I didn't hear all we didn't go in until the day before, and then we obviously left the morning. We had the late game, so I didn't hear all the banter about it. You know, our biggest concern from the women's coaches side at the beginning was, why are you doing all this cool stuff during the men's tournament that you didn't do during the women's tournament? That was our biggest concern at the beginning. When
Mm.
you start talking about um, what were people saying, it's like, you know, I the thing if I were to tell you what I was disappointed with, and I'm not sure the Big 12 wants me to share all my thoughts, but you know, I thought when you have a chance to do, because when we practiced on it, I mean, I was like a little kid in a candy store with the iPad in my hand, drawing stuff on the court. Like, you can do anything. Like,
Yeah.
it is amazing technology, and you can do anything, and we just have a grayscale court. Like, I just thought it was very, very boring. I thought this
Yeah.
idea that we can do anything with this, like we could change this court out every game. We could, I don't know. Like, I just thought the lack of creativity within what was that technology was capable of, that's what I was most disappointed in. And then to see all the stuff they were adding when they got to the men's tournament, in the timeouts, that was more like, well, why weren't they doing that during the women's tournament? And so that was a bigger disappointment for me at first.
Mm.
But certainly this is what I will tell you about me. First and foremost, safety is the most important thing. And if the women's coaches were concerned about the safety and they didn't listen, that'll obviously be a big topic of conversation. I never felt like it was unsafe. I did see some slipping. Maybe if we'd have played on it 3 days, I would have felt differently at the end of the weekend. But if our women's coaches were complaining about that, then it's going to be a big topic of conversation at our yearly meetings. But I'm never going to be mad at the league for leaning in on player safety. So it was the right thing to do. Did Christian Anderson, was it the floor? Would he have slipped? I mean, let's not pretend that people don't slip on hardwood.
Mm. Hmm.
They slip on hardwood too. But I is do adjustments need to be made in the court, for consistency? Maybe so. But I thought the innovation, the idea, I loved it. I'll lean into like Brett Yormark and what he's trying to do with the Big 12 and making our league different, and um I'm on board with all of that. So, but never at the expense of player safety.
All right. I appreciate it. I love how candid you are, and I knew you'd
Always.
have a really good answer on that. And by the way, I thought last thing I had for you, Markela's coming on, and I would say a lot of times, cynics like me can focus on negatives,
Yeah, you
and
can.
and
You
and yet
can.
I got to say that Markela, I mean, you knew it was coming, but that's, and I think that last game y'all played where you kind of
TCU.
had
Yeah, I think
the
you
TCU
saw it
game
in
where,
TCU. Like, I actually
yeah,
actually went to her. Like, I mean, we
yeah,
we we wanted to take advantage of the Miles matchup and hadn't really been able to. And I thought Markela did a good job when we started playing to her,
yeah,
of putting Olivia in action and, getting to the front of the rim. Her pull-up game's elite. When she gets to where she's, making 30% of her threes, like, she's gonna be pretty unguardable. And she's not there yet. And if you watch her shoot threes in practice, you would say that kid can really shoot the three. But there's, like, that has to translate. And right now, The part of her game that's translating is her ability to get, to her spots, get to the elbows, get to the short corners, hit her pull up. Pretty creative with the ball, and Markayla's superpower is like she has a confidence that very few players, have, like just an innate sense of I can do this, like she sometimes functions in a different spirit. I always tell this story. So she'd been on campus for, I don't know, a couple days last summer, and I look out my window and she's down in the gym and she's got her big, Apple headphones on, and she's dribbling the ball at the top of the key, and she's crossover between the legs, between, all this nonsense, which, I used to do the same thing when I was young. Like it's just you in the gym, and she's in a mat, you can see her imagining the scenario, and
Mhm.
she's waving off a ball screen, and then going one on one to her pull up. And this is all happening, and you can just see her in her own zone down there. And I remember calling a staff member in, and I said, "How many times since I've been at Baylor did I have a kid wave off a ball screen, at the top of the key?" Like it was just, but I love how much she loves to be in the gym, and I see so much in myself, like how many times I imagine hitting the state championship shot, like sitting, in my driveway, and like she's still got that kind of purity and love for the game. So I would definitely expect big things ahead
Yeah,
for her.
that's exciting. Was there one particular girl who went after Griner when Brittany stopped by, and that had to be kind of cool. And I saw
I'll
her
tell you
dunk.
what, I
Yeah,
know I know when Bella hit her early, and she missed her, quite frankly, patented, I always say, the most difficult thing to defend of Grinders,
yeah,
having to guard her in the pros, and not me, but my team, is, she turns over that right shoulder, leads with her, you know, arm, like, she turns with her shooting arm and puts that elbow, and she's 6 inches taller, typically than the person defending her. So that elbow goes like right at their nose, and you tend to foul her because you can't pull your arms back. So anyway, she took that shot and she missed on Bella, and I think Bella felt pretty good about that. But no, she was great. Like it was fun to watch her, interact with our posts. I was joking with Johnny, who coaches the post. I said, Griner's got him down here working on triple moves. I just want him to catch a bounce pass on a roll and make a layup when no one's guarding him. So like but the joy that it kind of brought, and really
yeah,
timing was so great, because when you're a weekend of practice with no opponent and it's starting to get stale because it's like,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
it was really good to have her in the gym. And I mean, I know there's some controversy, not in my mind, but I'll tell you one thing. That girl has an amazing heart, an amazing love for Baylor. And for anyone that doesn't understand that, like, I need people to understand Brittany Griner loves Baylor. And if the number of times between the retirement ceremony, to, this weekend, that she has said, "You have no idea how much this means to me," when we're asking her to come back, and
yeah.
that's the sentiment. Like she loves being a part of, this university and this program, and so it's special to have her back. Like our players feel it. It's she's truly a celebrity in the gym, but like she doesn't act like it. And so yeah, it was awesome.
All right. Well, it's fun to catch up with you. If Kyla or somebody does a dream shake during the game, we'll blame it on Brittany, right? If
We
you do
will.
like a
Yeah, I'm like, I
triple
think
move,
I
yeah.
think she just traveled 3 times on that triple move, but.
You were watching that pivot foot. It got a little.
So
Uh,
yeah,
All right. Well, thank you,
you
Nikki.
got it,
And
Matt. Good to see
man,
you.
we'll be watching
All right.
everything, and we'll talk to you before the Sweet 16. All right.